Welcome to another Yellowfin University video. In this video, we will be continuing what we've already built off of. So we have showed you how to open up the JS chart editor at this point. We've showed you the three different functions within the JS chart editor. We've talked about require.js and bringing in those external JavaScript libraries. In this video, we will be exploring the options object and how to debug your code in a very simple, very high level manner here. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. First thing I'm going to do is open up my developer console here. And I did that by pressing the F12 button while I was in my browser here. So when you're in your browser, you click F12 and it will open up your console here. So I do that while I'm still on the JavaScript tab here. And then when I move over to preview, as you can see, I have a debugger already set. This is automatically, it comes with Yellowfin. So when I click preview, it's going to run through my code and stop immediately at the debugger, which is the very first thing that's being called. The generate chart gets called first, and we're going to stop at debugger. So now it's paused, as you can see in debugger. Here's my code, as you can see it on the right-hand side. And now I have the options to explore the options object. So I'll come over to the console, and here's where I can type in options, let's say. And there's my options object. We have some keys in here, the div selector, the chart ID, the data set, and error callback. That's that function that, that generates the Yellowfin error screen that you would see. The div selector, this is going to be the div that we want to draw our chart into. Chart ID, just giving you some meta information here. But let's do this. Let's actually explore the options object in something that's a bit more readable, because we could go through and we can click the down arrow and then find all these different information, here. But it might be easier to explore if we just put all this, put this JSON object, that's what the options object is, it's a JSON object. We can put it into one of these Prettify websites where it will take it and format it for us, and then we can explore it that way. So let's use the JSON.stringify, and we'll pass our options object into there. And there it is. So kind of ugly. We'll go ahead and copy everything. Control C. And let's exit out of this very quickly. Make it so I can see my top here. And I use JSONformatter.org. There are a ton out there. You can use whatever you like. This is one that I prefer. We'll paste our text here, and we'll click Format Beautify. There we have it. So now we have it in a little bit easier to read fashion here, so we can actually explore this object. So we'll start at the very high level here. As I talked about, we have that div selector where you draw your chart into. We have the chart ID if you need that. And then we have dataset. Dataset is a very big key here within that object. It contains a lot of information. So let's jump down the list. So you have dataset.chart information. And chart information is going to have your width and height. And this is going to be dynamic. So as your screen grows or shrinks, these numbers will grow and shrink. So that's why it's very important that when you're drawing your charts, you use the height and width within here so your chart kind of scales accordingly with the size of the screen, or you can use a standard just 200 by 200 or whatever you want to use, but just remember that as the screen grows and shrinks, your chart will not grow and shrink. It will stay the same. We have dataset.metadata here, and the metadata is going to contain the columns that we have, so the gender, sales, and demographic. That's the name of our column. So when we're calling that data, we're going to refer to them as gender, sales, and demographic, as you see here. And this is just the metadata of those columns. So gender.orgref code, that's going to let us know that we have an orgref code, the data type, and the field name. And then sales has a metric color, so there's the color that sales is going to be. If you want to use that color, you can use your own custom color as well. And then we also, so getting out of metadata, again, metadata is going to have column information and then metadata about those columns. And then you have dataset.data. Now this is where all your data lives. So that dataset that we set up on the data step, that is what we're going to find here. So dataset.data is where we're going to have our column names, and then we're going to have the information within that column. So we have gender, and then here's the first value in gender, and we have formatted data and raw data. So formatted data, if you did any formatting, that's going to be what you want to call here. Raw data is just exactly how it looks in the view itself. So remember, when you're calling it, be dataset.data.gender.raw data or gender.formatted data. That's how you're going to access the value within that column. So we have these as keys here. So you have data.gender, then you have data.sales, and you have data.demographic. And again, you go .formatted data or .raw data depending on what you want. For example, if you were going to use some numbers, you would want to use the .raw data so you can manipulate that instead of getting the string here. Unless you just wanted to display this number with your $sign, then you would use .formatted data. And then we have .attributes here. So this is coming back up here. This is going to be the data. So data.attributes. Scroll on down. And we have a lot of data. And in the attributes, we're going to have that orgref code information that we need. So orgref code _ definitions. If you need to grab the display text from the orgref code, the sort order, that's all here per column, per value, as you can see. And you can even grab the colors. So if you have specific colors for each of those values within that column, you can sure access that as well. And here's finally your default colors. And that's going to be all of the objects within the options object. So you're going to access your data here, your chart information, your metadata, your colors, all going to be within the options object. That's why that generate chart function is required, because that's where you're going to be able to access your data. So coming back to our chart formatter here, we can come back to JavaScript. That is pretty much going to conclude this video. I just wanted to touch on that the options object. Again, sorry these videos are a little bit longer than our normal 1 to 3 minute timeline, but there's just a lot to cover in this JavaScript chart functionality. So again, thank you for tuning in. The next video and the final video we'll be doing is building a chart out of Google Chart. So leveraging their library to build a Google chart within Yellowfin. We'll see you next time.